like to call us to order here, and we can start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll do some introductions. I'm sure you want to start.
I'm Sheree Hales. I live in Woodscoy Township.
I'm Richard Honeywell. I live in Dresbeck Township.
I'm Margaret Walsh, and I live here in the city of Winona. But I just let you know that I do have farm families on both sides of my families, in my immediate families. So we want to do the approval of the agenda.
So,
One other introduction I'd like to make on just a moment. This is Brandis Witherspoon. She is the newest attorney in the county attorney's office, and you may see a little more of her as at this point she's the backup for planning and zoning and may be filling this seat for you. So,
Could you repeat her name again?
Brandis Witherspoon.
Brandis. Welcome, Brandis.
Welcome aboard.
Get a motion?
I would move to approve the agenda.
I guess I second the motion.
We have a motion to approve the agenda by Sheree and second by Richard. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. We want to do the approval of the December 22nd minutes.
I am going to have to recuse myself from that vote. I wasn't here last meeting.
I would move to approve the minutes.
I'll have to second that, and all those in favor? Aye. The minutes have been approved. Okay, we have petitions, docket BOA 1019-1701, to consider the petition of Joseph Glentz, a variance to allow a lot width of 84 feet instead of the required 100 feet in a rural residential zoning district pursuant to Chapter 10.8.6 of the Winona zoning ordinance. We can have the staff give their presentation.
Good afternoon. As was stated, the petition is for a lot width variance within the rural residential zoning district of 84 feet instead of the required 100 feet. Hit it. Next slide, please. This is a map of the area. As you can see it, can you guys see this screen very well? It's at the end of Minor Valley Road, which comes off of Highway 61. This is the Twin Bluffs area. To give you a reference of where we're located, it's at the end of Minor Valley, the dead end there. Next slide. This is a mapping exhibit which is in your staff report for the petition. What we've done here is overlaid a survey that was provided by the petitioner over top of our aerial photos, and then also turned on the green is the bluff overlay to give you an idea of steep slopes in the area. This is the existing dwelling on the property, which is this entire area here. And the red line is the proposed, approximate location of the proposed 9-acre parcel. The petitioner has stated that the location of any potential dwelling in the future would be down in this area. Access would come off of the existing cul-de-sac, which is right here. You can see that the survey actually shows the cul-de-sac extending. So the survey in the public right-of-way goes further, but the actual road ends back here. So there's a little bit of gap between the the surveyed public right-of-way and the actual road. But we are using the survey, parcel lines, and right-of-way for purposes of the variance. So that is the reason why they have any road frontage at all is because of the survey that was done back in the early 90s. I think the reason that the road didn't extend to where it was supposed to is because there's a draw here. The draw drains stormwater from the top of the ridge down through the valley this way and out, and that probably prohibited the road from being extended further. It kind of skirts this side of the cul-de-sac. But this was also, the survey and overlay allowed us to measure along the circumference of the cul-de-sac in the survey there. And that's where the road frontage is gained from. So from this point to this point along the circumference is 84 feet. And so that's what they would be left with for a road frontage requirement. This over here, 110 feet, is what the existing parcel would be left with. So that meets the 100-foot width requirement. Access would come off of the cul-de-sac down the driveway and then cross. There's actually, you'll see on the video, there's a little grassed access drive that goes across the draw, and there's a, well, I guess what you would consider something like a Missouri crossing. There's a couple of culverts and some concrete that allows you to cross over and water to go on like through the underneath the crossing. I'm sure under big rain events, maybe spring thaws, the water comes up and over that as it is right now. You can go ahead and hit the next slide. And we have a video, if you want to hit that with no volume. This is at the end of the cul-de-sac looking up at here's the petitioner's driveway going up to their existing home. A potential building site would be back in here. And then we're going to slowly pan around to give you a 360-degree kind of view of the area. You see there's a home back that way. Another home there. Then I'm going to walk down to the site just to give you a perspective from that area. Here's the grassed kind of path that is maintained right now. I'm assuming this would be upgraded if a dwelling was allowed there and built. This would probably need to be improved a bit.
Say, Lou, could we stop the tape for just a second? Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
From the end of the cul-de-sac that is there to where we're looking at the 84 feet, the theoretical cul-de-sac, how far is that? 50 yards, 100
I
yards?
didn't measure it, but I would say just from walking it to it's probably less than 100 feet.
Less than 100 feet, 75, 80 feet, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the proposed lot, or where we
Actually,
get back to that.
Just to back up, I'd say to the actual property line, where the property line starts to where the cul-de-sac currently is.
Okay.
It's probably less than 50 feet,
Okay.
maybe 20.
Okay, I was just curious about
Pretty
that.
close.
I drove up and looked at it, but I didn't go up the driveway and all that, so I'm just trying to get my head straight as to where I was.
Yeah, and I just went by
where I needed to be.
the kind of, there's a gate at the beginning of the driveway, and that's what I'm using to base that distance on. It's pretty close. I think the petitioner probably gives a better idea.
So when we see this access grassy, whatever, that is past the
It is
theoretical cul-de-sac?
past the property line. There would need to be an easement through the existing parcel up that driveway, and then connecting to that parcel if that's where the access was going to come from.
Okay, all right. Continue. I'm sorry, but while we're here, I figure it's easy to address it than theoretically later.
And this is, I'm just walking up on what could be about the location of a potential building site. You can see right about here where I'm going to stop walking is where it's kind of a gradual slope, and then beyond that, where the camera is showing right now, it kicks up significantly, and it's probably where the toe of the bluff comes to. So from there back to the draw is kind of your building envelope. That's the end of the video. Staff did have trouble finding adequate findings for some of the criteria. 3, 4, and 6 are the ones that we pointed out in the staff report. Those criteria are specifically getting towards the petitioner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. The special conditions unique to the property exist. So those are the findings that you need to make in order to approve the petition. Those are also part of what's defined as a practical difficulty. So that's the standard for granting your variances, and those two are key. The 6th one is also part of this, and that economic considerations alone cannot be the reason for the granting the variance. And so the petitioner has, after speaking with him a couple weeks ago, he did come up with some more information. I think it's in your staff report, an email that was sent from him, and I think he can talk a little bit more. He's here tonight and today, and he can talk a little bit more about some of those items as well. But those are the 3 criteria that you would need to make adequate findings for in order to grant it, and which staff had trouble finding evidence of. So with that, I will let you open up the public hearing and hear from the petitioner. And if you have any questions, I'll be right over here.
Thank you. Thank you, Lou. I get a motion to open the public hearing?
I so move.
I second.
Got a motion from Richard and second by Sheree to open up the public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. Is there anybody here that would like to speak for or against this petition? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and we'll see what you have to say.
I'm Joe Glentz, 26860 Minor Valley Road, and I'm the petitioner for this petition. You'd mentioned that one of the accesses would be through that existing area, but the other option would be coming right off the cul-de-sac, putting in a new culvert and doing something there. So it'd be just it'd be a larger culvert. Because I know the downstream neighbor has about a 30-inch culvert, and I know he's had trouble with some of these heavy rains, and so it would probably be something bigger than that. The other possible building site, if somebody wanted to put in a longer driveway, it'd have to be about a 1,000-foot driveway, would be at the very back side of the property, because there's a flat area back there as well. But that depends if somebody wanted to do a long driveway. My existing driveway is probably about 700 feet, and that's plenty long in the wintertime. I guess the only other thing is that the property is at the end of the cul-de-sac, so I don't have the 200 feet to divide between the 2 pieces of property. It's proposed property for the other splitting. Talked to the surveyor, and he said you might want to get a variance first. Let's see. Yeah, I think you had asked where the actual cul-de-sac started, and in the video there's that split rail fence, and the center post for the cul-de-sac is just right behind one of those posts.
Okay, so the proposed or what we're dealing with here, property line is at that post?
Yeah,
Past
pretty
it?
close. Yep. And then I think the cul-de-sac is 60 feet in diameter from around there. So that's roughly where the surveyed cul-de-sac is.
Right.
The actual one's probably 75, 80 feet back from that for the center line,
All right.
in that ballpark. And right now, my wife and I don't plan on doing anything with the property other than getting it surveyed. Just, we're not planning on building on it. But that's, we may be there for another 5, 10 years and then sell the house we're on and possibly the whole property. So that's our plans.
So getting if I can ask, and I believe I can at this point, justification, your motivation, something motivated you to spend several hundreds, if not maybe a few $1,000s, to get this extra lot approved. What was your motivation?
Well, we're thinking about retirement. And also, I think there is no other buildable lots in that valley right now that I know of. And so we're thinking, if we can open up another lot that somebody could buy at some point in the future to be able to, if somebody wanted to live in the rural area. We're thinking if we did sell the house and if we had that extra 9 acres land, we're not going to get much more money for it if we just sell it as is. But if we subdivide it as a possible building lot, then, in the future, it might be an option.
So I'm assuming that you weren't worried about potential buyers wanting, being able to come up there and live in the great outdoors. I guess that leads me to assume that really you're looking for an enhanced resale value of your property.
Mainly.
Mainly, sure.
Yep.
All right. That's all the questions I have. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to speak for or against the petition? Does anybody else want to speak for or against the petition? If there's no one here, then we will close the public hearing. I need a motion to do that? Okay.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right. Motion's been made by Sheree, second by Richard. We'll vote on closing the public hearing. All those in favor?
Yay.
Yay. All right, the public hearing is officially closed for this petition. Any discussion?
Well, everybody on this panel knows I like to go the extra mile for the taxpayers, and but I'm not prepared to write the justification to get past the financial aspect of the difficulties. And I don't know if anybody else here feels creative enough or not. What do we think?
I think that there are 3 criteria that are questionable in this. And, so I think it would be hard to grant this.
Speaking of the phone, please.
You can't hear you.
That's how I feel when you talk over there without any microphones. Excuse me.
We'll try to project better.
I think that, as Lou pointed out, there's
Not yet?
three.
You just have to pull it closer.
I can't.
Oh, last time I did that, I had the cops up here, so I better stay in my seat.
There you go.
There. Eric,
Okay, I'm going to really
you're
surprise
the
you.
master of all trades.
As Lou pointed out, There are three criteria that are questionable in meeting this, and we have to be able to say yes to all of them. So I'm not sure that this variance will be able to be passed. That's my own feeling.
I personally, just for the board, but I guess for the record, I don't believe there is any way this board ever makes a decision that doesn't have some financial impact. The guy that can't back who's outlived his home when he was 30, and now his lifestyle, he got more tractors, more boats, more ATVs, whatever. He needs to put up a 100-foot by 50-foot pole shed, and he comes to us. And instead of sell his property to a new family and go off and spend his money, whatever, he's looking for deferral of that life, midlife disruption. Perhaps we really should take a look at the other two rather than just shoot this down unilaterally on what is the most glaring thing that I saw was the primary motivation being money. And I know I've been shot down because I had a house fire one time, and the only thing the fire department saved was a garage. And I couldn't get 2-foot easement to move my garage because it benefited me financially. So anyway, I've been on both sides of this issue,
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, why don't we go to?
I think that we can, I have a question, do we need to go through all of it if we're in agreement with the staff?
You don't have to, you can just address the three questionable ones.
Okay.
At the end, whatever you have
Yeah.
done, there needs to be an approval of the findings of fact.
Sure. How about if we just discuss then number 3?
Yep.
That the applicant has established practical difficulties in complying with the official control and process, propose to use the property in a reasonable manner. We see the staff report here. The petitioners indicate that the building location that has been chosen is the best location on the property. If housing is permitted to be built and has cited, excuse me, and has cited the location of a drainage way with steep slopes to the southeast of the building site as a difficulty to building there. The site he has chosen is closest to an existing dwelling for ease of access, which would impact prime soils and agricultural fields the least. Am I on the Stephen? There you go.
Go ahead.
There you go.
When you got to prime
Thank
soil.
you for catching me on that.
Well,
I thought
I
I was
was
reading it
really
and I thought,
wondering
well, I
about
was
this.
looking at it thinking, what am I talking about? That's somehow I was hesitating reading it here. All right, let's look at number 3 then on the first proposal. The petitioners say the applicant has not established that there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control and purpose to use the property in a reasonable manner. The petitioner simply does not have enough land along public right-of-way to maintain, to meet the minimum lot width to establish a second parcel and building site. Accordingly, additionally, this draft thing's getting in my eyesight. Additionally, the natural features of the proposed parcel will make developing a dwelling site there in a reasonable manner difficult. The proposed parcel has a very small footprint on which a dwelling might be accommodated. There are bluff and steep slopes areas that cover the majority of the parcel. The remaining area is next to a gully that conveys stormwater and is susceptible to erosion. Substandard building envelope cause problems for locating septic systems. This site would need to provide 2 locations suitable for wastewater treatment as required by code for new lots. So that's the staff opinion that the applicant has not established. Any discussion on that one?
Well, yeah, why don't we? I don't know, and maybe Lou knows. If we go back to when Mr. Glentz purchased this property, and what were the frontage requirements?
When did you purchase? Yeah, so that's when the survey was from, was the early 90s. I think it was the same, wasn't it, Eric?
Correct, yes.
Eric was actually here in 94. So he might be able to remember now.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that
I think it was the same.
his lack of frontage wasn't his fault. It's
And if you look at the whole survey, there's actually 4 or 5 lots included on it. They were all put together, and they're up, they're not all on here, but there's one over on this side, one over on this side, and then another one up. Those were all created in order to meet the subdivision requirements, which are 300 feet of road frontage and 5 acres. So this would actually create 2 small splits towards the subdivision requirements, which are allowed. The third one is where it runs up against the subdivision wall, if you will. But in this case, you can see that they were creating those lots in a way to meet the subdivision requirements at that time. And
which were 5 acres at that time.
And 300 feet of road frontage. So they were up and over the minimum width, actually, of a lot in order to meet the subdivision requirements. The only one that was not was his parcel here, which was meeting the minimum lot size, but not the subdivision requirements for lot width. So
even then, with only 200 feet, he needed another. Did he need a variance to build his house then to get approval for less than 300-foot frontage?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
But they had at least 100 feet, and it was the first, what we call a small split towards the subdivision requirements. So you can have 2 small splits since 1970 and meet that requirement. So they were still meeting the requirement at that time, and no variance was required. But you can tell by the survey and the way that they laid them out that they were aware of the lot width requirements and were laying them out accordingly.
Okay.
To meet the ordinance at that time.
Actually, at that time, that area was zoned rural agricultural, and so you needed 10 acres.
Okay.
But when they made those other lots, they're all about 5 acres, so they must have been planning to, shortly after I bought it, that they got rezoned rural residential.
I think maybe there was. I was looking back at that actually, and I'm just trying to remember, but there was the dead end, and then the ag district was maybe your parcel and to the south, or at some points along that road, it was to the south, and the RR district was further up the road. And so then I think it got rezoned and extended down there when these lots were about the time that these lots and a few of the others down there were split. Does that sound right, Eric?
That would be about the right time frame, because the RR district, rural residential, was really not created until they adopted the 1989 code. Prior to that, I think the RR district was intended to be a hybrid of the A district and the A2. And before the 89 revision in the ag districts, you had your A1 and A2, 2-acre sites and 5-acre sites. I'm not aware of a 10-acre district or ag district. But then after the rezoning, they identified valley corridors where 5-acre lots would be appropriate. That is where those zoning districts were established in that particular area.
Lou, I have a question, if I might. Should this variance be granted and eventually someone, buys this and decides they'd like to build a house there, is there additional permitting that will be necessary because of slopes?
Will there be additional permitting that would be required for to build a new home? So a development certificate would be required.
Right.
If they are under 18% slope and below the toe of the bluff, then no conditional use permit or variance would be required.
Okay, thank you.
So I think they could be, is that correct? Is that how you see it? The 18% slope and.
I think there's
below,
areas
you know,
there, I mean, this area here might be, I mean, we'd have to go out and actually measure and stuff, but I think that there was, when I was standing out there with the video and you could see where it started to kick up, there was a space between there and the gully. But it's tight, you know, it's not, that's where the question came in with this, with number 3 specifically, was questioning the ability to develop the site and meet those requirements, with the septic system requirements and the footprint for a home. And then being down next to a gully that's erosive and tends to move or, you know, come out of its banks from time to time, you know, the closeness of all those features creates a small
footprint, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it couldn't be done, but I don't have any evidence that it can be.
So where we are here, the reason he's. No problem. The reason Mr. Glentz is needing, well, I guess he'd need a variance to create the parcel anyway. But then we got 16 feet. Is it 16 feet of frontage? Roughly.
Depending on the survey.
Roughly 15, 16 feet. Not a big issue amongst friends. I guess I get so conflicted to my fellow board members. I don't know if you went up there, but it probably would not be the greatest, or significantly greater than some of the worst offenders up there already.
Not the worst site I've ever seen for a building site.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen worse that have been built, yes.
I was downright shocked when I drove up there.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, are you saying if this parcel was parceled off, they would not need a variance to build again on what's being proposed here?
No, they wouldn't if they can fit within that footprint.
Within that footprint, they
Yeah.
would not need to get a
They
variance?
could
Okay.
come back to you for a variance from the bluff requirement and build further up the slope and create a little bit more room for themselves up in here in the colored area.
Okay, do we want to have a motion to vote on this, or we want to close the discussion on this one, or?
I think we can close the discussion.
Okay,
Although Stephanie still wants us to hit the 3 points.
The way that you would close your discussion is to either have amended anything in there that you disagree with that you want to change, or to adopt the findings as written, and when that motion to either approve or deny, if it's going to be an approval, it should also include any conditions that you wish to have.
Got all that?
normally we have 5 people, and it's a little easier to do this motion stuff with, one of them has to do it today.
Yeah. Well, what
The
is
chairman
amount-
doesn't normally do that.
What it amounts to today is, I think Stephanie needs us to at least discuss for the record items 3, 4, and 6 of the practical difficulties before
Yep.
we do anything. We've done 3.
Right, we're going to vote on 3. We're
Oh,
going to vote on them individually is what, if we can get a motion, I'd like to see a vote on 3. But I'm not the motion person because I'm the
well,
chair.
do we typically? I mean, maybe
We
something
typically go
changed.
through the list.
You don't have to vote on them individually. If you don't want to change anything, you can just move to the next one without a motion. It's just at the very end, you will need to adopt findings.
If we want to change any one of these 3, we vote on it now. Is that the way it's? Because something has changed.
Revision to the draft in front of you.
I think it changed even more when I wasn't here last week, or a month ago.
It did.
So
did.
it obviously
Still-
did, and
Yep, it did.
okay.
Highlighted in red if it needs to have special attention.
This is much better than it was the last
Okay.
meeting you made it to, so.
I did the same thing you did,
There
the
you
two
go.
pieces of paper. Has not.
Well, I would move that the applicant has not established practical difficulties for criteria number 3. And then we can vote on that and move on.
Well, he hasn't.
So second that motion
He's
then?
he's 16 feet short.
Sheree has made a motion that she accepts it as is, and I need a second if we're.
I will second that.
All right, we got a motion by Sheree to accept the number 3 as shown to us by the staff, and second by Richard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to number 4. The variance request is not due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property, not created by the owners of the property since enactment of the ordinance. Minor Valley Road terminates at the northern end of the property and does not provide enough road footage for an additional parcel in the dwelling site to be established, which is not a unique characteristic of the property, is what we have on the draft here. Any discussion on that?
I have a hard time with 16 feet. I basically have a hard time with 16 feet. Being, there's a lot riding on this. And 16 feet is somewhere around 4 steps. And where it is, the 16 feet means nothing. I can't understand why it means it has no significance in my world, okay? It is big enough for cars to come up there, and I easily turned around. I'm not so sure a semi can't turn around. And whether one guy has 110, the same guy has 110, and when he splits it off, he's going to have 84. I guess we could do it to where they were both 2.5 feet short. But you and I, everybody knows that the world is probably moving enough to where it's insignificant to me. So I have a hard time going along. The variance request is not due. Now, I asked the question, to special condition unique to the property by owners of property since enactment of ordinance. The ordinance was there according to Lou that had 100 feet per property at that time. So it's still 100 feet, so nothing has changed other than Mr. Glantz wants to whatever.
So you're saying the request is?
I'm going through it. I think I will second your motion.
We haven't had one yet on number 4.
Oh, I thought you made a motion.
She made one for number 3, and then we're making a
Well,
motion.
we already voted on number 3,
Right,
didn't we?
now we have to have a motion for number 3, for number 4. And I haven't had one yet? Did I not hear you, or?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't think, you didn't make a motion for number 4. She did not. So
Okay.
would you like to make a motion for number 4, or?
I think, and I don't know if we'll see what Stephanie says. I'm inclined on number 4. Don't know if it changes anything. But I'm inclined to say that the variance request effectively meets the intent of the ordinance.
Step 1 would be to modify the finding or the first sentence to either is or is not. So you would have to be able to find that the variance request is due to
Is-
a condition or circumstance unique to the
Is
property.
effectively in compliance with,
That's not what you have to find. You have to find that it either is or is not due to special conditions or circumstances unique to the property.
this one.
And that those were not created by the owners of the property since enactment of the ordinance, and then you have to provide an explanation.
Well, that's a pretty hard hill to climb at this point, since I've already established through my questioning that in fact it was there. But this is why I work around this, so we all understand it. And I'll make a motion to accept the staff finding, item number 4.
So what you're saying is the variance request is due to special circumstances on that one?
No.
Is not due, okay, you're going to accept that
I'm
one.
going
All
to
right,
accept.
just want to
I'm going
clarify.
to accept it. It is not. There is nothing changed since Mr. Glenn's bought the property.
I would second that.
All right, we have a motion to accept number 4 on the
As written
as
on the
written.
findings.
The findings by Richard and second by Sheree. We'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Okay. And our last one to look at,
Number 6.
number 6. Economic considerations alone do constitute practical difficulties. The project appears to be solely for economic gain. The petitioner has stated that they are planning to sell the property in 5 to 10 years and that they don't plan to build on the property. The purpose behind splitting the property is so that it can be sold as a billable lot in order to increase its resale value.
I would move to accept that as well.
I would second that.
We have a motion to accept number 6 as is. Economic considerations alone do constitute practical difficulties. And by Sheree and a second by Richard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Because of those 3 conditions that we have supported with the data we have gotten from our discussions and from the applicant himself and from the staff, I'm sorry, Mr. Klaus, but your petition.
Madam Chair, you actually have to have a motion adopting all
The
of
whole thing.
findings, all
All
8
right.
of them, all 8 of them, and to deny.
All right, have I got a motion to accept the findings as is without any amendments?
You have a motion for me to accept the findings as is without amendment.
Second.
We got a motion to accept the findings as is by Richard and a second by Sheree. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Glanz, I'm sorry, but your motion has been
You still need the motion to deny the petition.
on top of the findings. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Right.
I would so move.
Sheree would so move to deny the variance, and Richard votes to second the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, Mr. Glenstein, once more, sorry about that. Just to let you know, appeal to district courts, all decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals from any administrative order, requirement, or decision or determination shall be final, except for an aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on question of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered by the public hearing must do so to the district court. The planning department is not responsible for filing the appeal. All right.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. Okay, let's get my paperwork. We're done with this one. We'll get this one out of our way so we don't read the wrong one. Okay, and we're on number 2 here, the one with the staple in it. Okay, docket number BOA 1019-1702, Tom and Julie Siebenauer. I have to flip to my agenda here. No wonder Larry has so much trouble with all this, huh? Okay, docket BOA 1019-702 again, to consider petition of Tom and Julie Siebenauer, 1375 Lone Stone Court, Southeast Chatfield.
Sylvan Heights Road.
I have a different address on here.
Stone Heights is their current address. The proposed parcel is at the 18641 Sylvan.
So the agenda address is the correct one?
No, so the Sylvan Heights one that Sheree is.
So to consider, I understand that, but to consider the petition for these two people, we use the 1375?
That is their current home.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's all right. Lone Stone Court, Southeast Chatfield, Minnesota. A variance to allow a building site established on Class 2 soil type instead of the required Class 4 through Class 8 soil type pursuant to Chapter 10.4.7 of the Lone County Ordinance. We will now hear from the staff. It does get kind of crazy.
All right, so yeah, it's the petition of Tom and Julie Siebenaller for a prime soils variance. They're looking to build on Class 2 soils out on Sylvan Heights Road, east of Highway 74 in Elba Township. This is the section of the Winona County zoning ordinance that indicates the need for this variance, because it's greater than 40%. And this parcel is actually made up of 78% prime soils. So that's the location there on Sylvan Heights Road. So the proposed building site is going to come off of their existing drive there, and the proposed parcel is about 6.2 acres in size. And as you can see here, the only part of the parcel that isn't prime soils is this section over here, which is composed of steeper slopes and a drainage way that exits out this way. So it's pretty difficult to locate a new house here without using prime soils. And this is the view looking to the south, and this existing building here, the petitioners have indicated will be removed, and the house will be somewhere in this area. And this is the view looking to the east, coming around the other side of that building, which the video here will show. So, yeah, we're looking to the south and now to the east to some of the existing buildings on the parcel and back towards their existing dwelling. And here I'll walk around this shed there. That's just indicating where the new house would be. That building there is the one that would likely come down. Get around the side here and just look back to the east to the building site.
So that distance from the existing house to this shed is what, 250 feet?
Yeah, it's less than, I'd say it's somewhere from 200 to 300 feet is where the proposed site will be.
Is this the shed they said was coming down?
Yep, the one that you can see there on the left side of the image is the one that was indicated would
It
come
would be
down.
come down if there was
Yep, because
building.
the proposed driveway, as you can see here, is going to kind of come right through that area, so.
Okay, just want to be sure I was tracking
So
right.
let me ask you one other question while you're here. This is a 6.2 acre site,
Yep,
250 feet from the existing whatever. We're taking down an older building that is going to become the footprint for the new home.
so nope, the new home is not going to go directly on top of this site.
Oh, it isn't?
from my
Okay.
understanding, no.
Well, I was kind of wondering if that's where we were headed.
Because there had been a previous barn on this location before. To the south of that, yep, so I'll back up here for a second. So there had been a barn down in here, but this is the indicated from the application where the new house would be. And the findings from the staff report that would need to be changed for approval are numbers 1, 2, and 7.
All right.
Thank you, Blake.
Thanks, Blake.
Open the public hearing.
Sure. I got a motion to open the public hearing?
I would move to open the public hearing.
I got a motion from Cherie to open the public hearing.
I will second that
And a
motion.
second from Richard. So we will now take a vote. Shall we open the public hearing? Everybody in agreement? Aye.
agreement.
Okay, we will now open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to speak for or against this petition? Please come to the podium, state your name and address, and talk away.
My name is Tom Siebenaler, and my address right now is 1375 Lone Stone Court, Southeast Chatfield. The idea is for my wife and I and 4 kids to move to the country on my mom and dad's acreage. And the idea is to be out there close to them so they can kind of help us with the kids. At the same time, as they get older, we help them in turn, take care of them, help them in any way we can. I did get a new job in St. Charles to make it be a nice commute from that area to St. Charles, and that's kind of the idea of where I'm coming from. And also my sister lives close by. She does our daycare for our kids as well, so it'd be very convenient for me and my wife to be out there. Any questions?
Well, just for the record, going forward, we get through these criteria. How big a footprint is the house?
85, right. What did you say, 85, 84, I think, 83 by 36, which includes a garage
Yep.
on the application here.
By 36, okay. 6.2 acres. That's a pretty small percentage of 6.2 acres. What's going to happen to the remaining prime soil? What are we doing with that?
So the neighbor currently has crops on there. It would continue with the crops. We'd have a little small section of yard for the kids to play in. That'd be about it.
Which would be what, half, 3/4 of an acre?
Probably an acre.
Probably an acre?
At least an acre.
Okay, so we're not talking taking 6.2 acres of prime soil and throwing it away. We're talking an acre,
Give or take, yeah.
give or take a bit. All right.
And taking down the shed puts the land back? Is it what's the, just taking down the shed because you don't like it, or?
Well, yeah, I'd be kind of in the way of, I mean, it's not the most best looking shed to be looking at, but taking the old shed down, it's been there for over probably 30 years. Taking that away and taking some concrete away, and
What's going to happen to the land? Lawn? The farmer that's renting the land, is he going to farm it?
yep, he'd probably continue to farm at least the south section with crops,
Yeah.
if he wanted to, unless, if he didn't, we'd plant something there.
Sure. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak for or against the petition? Anyone else want to speak for or against the petition? Hearing no one else?
I would move we close the public hearing.
I would second that.
We got Richard and Shree on that one. We'll vote to, should we close the public hearing? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is closed. I'll open for discussion here.
Well, I think we need to, as in the last petition, consider separately each of these criteria and the staff analysis.
Okay, do we want to look at number 1? The variance request is not in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. According to the staff, the Agriculture and Resource Conservation Zoning District is established for the purpose of protecting the working agricultural landscape of Winona County as a means to ensure the continued viability of this resource. This petition to allow a new dwelling would take 0.5 acres of agricultural land out of production, and while not jeopardizing the viability of agriculture in the immediate zone, it also does not forward the preservation of the county's working agricultural lands.
I think there's some very obvious arguments to that, and I'm not even sure that there isn't something in the ordinance that talks about second houses, and Eric can talk to me about that. Moving children closer to agricultural families, one way or another. I think it's the intent, and if it isn't, it ought to be the intent of the Planning and Zoning Board to to keep these agricultural families close, engaged, and it's certainly a higher calling to take care of mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and children than I think it is to tend to cattle. And if it isn't, I don't know what we were thinking of when we wrote the ordinance. Okay? We're not talking Mall of America here.
I'd have to be in agreement. I think a 0.5 acre.
Which is going to be supplanted by a quarter acre.
Right, I think taking that amount away, it's a minimal amount weighed with the family. I agree with you on that, so.
One manure spill out in the country could almost kill that much land.
I would just like to mention that the Planning Commission did hear this at our last meeting and did grant the CUP for this project.
Oh, you did? Okay. I wasn't aware.
And did that already go to the county board?
I shouldn't have.
So the county board has already approved the CUP that the planning commission approved, okay? All right.
So I would like to suggest, I would agree with Richard and yourself about, while the variance technically is not in harmony with the ordinance, I would like to amend this to say, it will not jeopardize agriculture in the area. And so to amend that criteria.
Okay,
that
so we would have to amend it to the variance request is in harmony with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. And we would name the family connection to the land and the minimal amount of acreage.
Well, we can do that if Stephanie so insists, but she does.
She does, Richard, so we have to.
You need to modify the reasoning for it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
She does.
Yep.
Modify the finding to be.
Yeah, you can use lofty terms that might, this family, the variance is in harmony with the intent and purpose of this ordinance.
Is that a motion?
Because-
Is that a motion?
No, wait a minute, I'm just trying to get this organized in my brain. I'm thinking that we need the higher calling of family involvement.
Suggestion to you would be to be able to tie that to something in the zoning ordinance and the purpose for that, because that's what you need to tie it to. So look at your zoning ordinance and figure out what those purposes are and what you can then address through that. And that's both the zoning district as well as the zoning ordinance as a whole.
So now you're saying that I've got to bring 350 pages, or I have to memorize the zoning ordinance? I don't think so.
We're hoping that Eric sprang up and will do this for us.
Based on the zoning ordinance. If you can't tie it to something in the zoning ordinance, then it's not justified.
Eric?
I guess I just don't want to go off in the weeds anymore on this. One point that I'd like to maybe show, a lot of these requests come down to rationalizing the request and what the intent is. A very easy way to maybe put this in perspective is that this represents the best attempt to not impact other lands. Obviously, when we're looking at zoning requests with people that are looking at doing things, we try to look at what can meet the requirements. And in fact, people can avoid variances, that's one of our job. But, just to throw out an example, they could come with their proposal, they'd have to maybe shift the house down in this area here. It's probably not as good site. It's probably going to then do much more damage to the fields, to the farmlands. But there is scenarios or options that we could draw up on paper that show that they would not need a variance if they had 1 or 2 acres that grabbed as much of this rough land and shift the percentages. So I think in looking at these and maybe for future reference, I think a finding that would deal with some of these that we get stuck up on is that what they want to do, even though it's prime, it represents the least amount of impact to an agricultural setting. I think that that alone would address some of the issues. And just by drawing up different scenarios, it's kind of a process of sequencing in some of the other programs that I look at, what represents the best case for particular property. And, that's just my take on this. So, if it's worded somehow to that nature, I think that would probably get you a long ways there.
Well,
How do we word that then, Eric, to tie it into an ordinance?
See, I think, which ones are numbered 1, 3, and 5 or something?
1, 2, and 7, yeah.
I mean, as far as prime soils, and this proposal represents the least intrusive impact to the agricultural land. I think that addresses it. It's,
it does.
yeah, I mean, that would be an accurate statement, I think, in this case. If
I was sitting here looking at the presentation, and this rough land is not appreciably steeper. I mean, I don't know what the scale is on those elevation lines.
yeah.
But it's relatively flat. Probably could run a road down through there, and it would be totally legal.
Yeah. Another one is that if you have buildings that have been dismantled or taken down, they are not going to be restored back to prime agricultural tillable land. There's buildings that we've taken down from 70, 80 years ago, and they still are going to show impacts. You're not going to have the productivity on those type of impacted or disturbed soils. And in that vein, you're actually keeping the buildings confined to an area. You're not taking over naturally untilled areas, which they could do without a variance and create more damage, I think, with the intent of that segment of ordinance.
So let me just double check this here with you while you're here. So you're saying that the variance, if we decide the variance is in harmony with the intent of the purpose, it would be because it takes the least amount of agricultural land out, it takes the buildings away, and there's a farm family that keeps together, which are all reasons within the ordinance?
Yes, I would say so.
Stephanie, would that be in your legal?
I believe we could modify that last sentence of what's currently there to, instead of the, does not forward the preservation of county's working agricultural lands, substitute in the proposal where that's the agricultural land.
Stop, you're going way too fast for me here at the end of it. What was that?
The last sentence,
Right, this petition?
the last phrase of that where it currently says it also does not forward the preservation of the county's working agricultural lands. We could strike that and substitute in, and the proposal represents the least intrusive impact to the agricultural land and will assist in longevity of the farming of the current parcel, something along those lines.
Preservation.
Can I get a motion? Cherie has moved to modify number 1 to say the variance request is in harmony with the intent and the purpose of the ordinance, and we would back it up with what Cherie, what Stephanie just said in terms of the changing the last sentence. Cherie has made the motion.
I'll second it.
Richard seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have moved on to number 2. The variance request is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And I would think that, just from our discussion here, either one of you have I'll just wait here as the chair.
I think we need Stephanie to help us with the language to amend this as well.
Let me finish up with number 1 then, and then I'll figure out what you're trying to say and see if I can give you a suggestion.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Madam Chairman, could the suggestion for the variance be part of the discussion, emanate from the discussion
Exactly.
from the board as opposed to council for number 2?
Sure.
Sure. So you want to say that, have us tell you why we want to do number 2? Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's
Any
see,
discussion?
let's see what these gentlemen says here. The comprehensive plan generally supports. We're going to wordsmith this to where is not becomes is. Okay? The comprehensive plan generally supports the preservation and promotion of agricultural land and the connectivity of family. Okay? Let's write that down. Connectivity of family. And as proposed, their approach has done the least amount of, has impacted the least amount of productive soil possible to facilitate their plan. I hope somebody was recording that or writing it down. But you get the gist of where I'm coming from. Anybody want
get the
to
gist.
smooth that out?
Are you in agreement that number 2, the variance request is consistent with the comprehensive plan? And we're saying that it supports the preservation of agricultural lands and the connectivity of family?
The agricultural family.
So we're saying the comprehensive plan generally supports the preservation and the promotion of agricultural lands and the connectivity of family is what you want to say there?
That's
And
what
this
says in
petition
there.
puts the dwelling on the, takes away the least footprint.
Yeah,
We have a building that comes down and they're still planning on doing agricultural, still using that land agriculturally.
This approach minimizes negative impact on agricultural lands. However we want to put it that way.
Least intrusive impact to agricultural.
Least intrusive would be great.
Okay, Attorney Snuddle, are you ready for number 2?
Give me just a moment to consolidate.
All right.
the duty you just read and-
Sure. All right. We'll give you a moment. And we'll look at number 7 ourselves while we're waiting. How's that? Just to get your, ready, put your.
preservation and promotion of agricultural lands and uses and the connectivity of families. As proposed, the approach will impact the least amount of productive soil possible to facilitate the plan and will minimize the negative impact on agricultural lands.
All right, do we have a motion to,
I so move.
I'll second that.
we have a motion by Richard, second by Cherie. We will vote on the motion for number 2 only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we'll move on then. We're in agreement up till number 7, which says the variance can be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance and is the minimum variance which would alleviate the practical difficulty.
the variance cannot be alleviated
All right, and our reasoning for that?
by a less intrusive method than the one proposed by the petitioners.
So we are saying that the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method, and just as a point of discussion, the footprint that they are planning on doing is much better than one that would not take the variance?
If we're saying yes to the ones above, okay?
Right.
They could have, like Eric put here,
Yes.
they could have very easily put this out here, tore up 5 acres or 7 acres or 9 acres, depending on how far it is, and destroyed, put a farm road down through there, a driveway, destroyed all kinds of land. Their approach is such that it avoided that, okay? This variance allows them to avoid that loss of destruction of land. All right?
Well, this last line on here, the petitioner is not engaged in agricultural work on the land and could conceivably build on a more suitable parcel. I don't think there's a more suitable parcel.
There isn't.
Okay, so I think that's what you're trying to
Well, I think,
say here?
yeah, I think I said it pretty well, but
Yeah, but just,
I think the variance could not be, and we got Ken here, but could not be alleviated by a more rational location.
and I think that the petitioner did say that they have someone that has a contract for their agricultural work, but if that contract was not continued, then they themselves would be doing agricultural work on that land. So I think it would be reasonable. What do you think here, to change it? So the variance cannot be alleviated by a reasonable method other than a variance, and is the minimum variance, which would alleviate the practical difficulties. And our reasoning behind that would be,
Based on what you just said, that there is not a less intrusive method available to alleviate the practical difficulty.
Yeah.
The footprint proposed is smaller than any footprint that would not require a variance.
That's why you make the big bucks, Stephanie.
all right, so.
I'll trade
Do I
salaries
have a
with you.
motion to accept the,
I so move.
do I have a second? Do I have any more discussion on that? Do you have something you want to add to that?
No,
Okay.
we're moving to accept the criteria as amended.
Okay.
I would second that.
You made the motion.
Okay.
Cherie seconded. All those we're going to vote on the motion as amended from the findings. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now we look at the entire picture here of the variance 1 through 8 with the following conditions. Do I have a motion to accept the findings as amended and to vote on whether or not to approve it? Yes. Exactly. So, do I have that motion? So moved by Cherie. We are accepting the findings. We are voting to approve with the amendments that we made in the findings and adding the conditions.
I would second that.
All right, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, congratulations. You have gotten your variance on this. And just for the record, appeals to the district court, all decisions by the Board of Adjustment in granting variances or in hearing appeals for any administrative order, requirement, decision, or determination shall be final, except that any aggrieved person or persons or any department, board, or commission of the jurisdiction or of the state shall have the right to appeal within 30 days after receipt of the notice of the decision to the district court in the county in which the land is located on questions of law and fact. Any party that would like to submit an appeal to the decision just rendered at this public hearing must do so in district court. The planning department is not responsible for the filing of an appeal. All right. Sure, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right.
This is getting harder on us than the applicants.
Well, it is getting harder on us than it is the applicants some days. But I think that if we all had the training on the same page, we might get this. Some of these changes were made, and we don't always make the meetings where the changes were made, but.
They're working on putting together a training.
Sure, and this document, I think, is much more sound than the one that you and I.
Cut our teeth on. Yeah.
Yes, on the first one. So I think that, if we all become familiar with, I think now I think Phil was here for the last one, and so was Larry, so I think.
Because we
got it here, so.
we really need to be prepared, even though I believe we're off whatever. We need to come prepared to where this doesn't take so long.
Right?
And that means prejudging, but we need to think this through.
Well, I think we need to come, if we don't.
Let me tell you why I think this, okay?
Sure, then
We are a quasi-legal, the only quasi-legal board other than the county board, and I'm not even sure about the county board,
right,
okay? We're making legal decisions.
I understand
We
that.
are judges,
We are.
and we got to be very careful, I believe, that we don't have our judgment swayed
Outside the law.
outside of our autonomy, okay? We need consultants. Stephanie's a consultant to this board. As far as I'm concerned, Eric is a consultant to this board, okay? But they don't hold veto power, okay? This is quality. And once they do, if it gets to a court, okay,
I
we are
think
going to lose.
I think that that's the point Stephanie makes with us discussing what our findings are,
Yeah.
so.
That's where it gets really, really kind of tight. If a board decides, if a court of law decides, and ever gets challenged, that we have checked or shirked or let our judgment be clouded by our planning and zoning department and their recommendations, okay, rather than given the full measure, okay?
Yep.
We are no longer an autonomous, I mean, we're walking, in my mind, I don't hear anybody talking about that, but in my mind, I think we're on the frickin' edge, okay? I can see where planning and zoning needs this, because, and there's nothing that gets involved, there's nothing that runs up against state law. But us being the quasi-legal board, okay? If we appear to be altering our position because of influence from staff, recommendations from staff we
Yeah,
need.
the bottom line is these
We
are,
gotta be
these are,
careful
the
of
bottom line is these are findings,
Yeah.
and despite what's on these findings, we make the vote.
We have
at
to.
this board, and
We have to.
that is the way it is, and I certainly have that understanding. And Sheree, you have that understanding too? All right, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn by Richard and second by Sheree, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. We're closed.